speaking of big events, of the Canadian Power Toboggan Championships, Bozak, what comes to mind?
Putting outboards on the back of toboggans?
Well, let's talk about what comes to my mind, okay?
All right.
Bozaks!
Inventors of?
Absolutely one of the first snowmobiles ever invented, Bozak.
That's coming up next.
Bozaks. The town of Bozak has a long history with the snow machine. That's one of the reasons for the Canadian Power Toboggan races held there every year. As a matter of fact, one of the very first snowmobiles ever invented was manufactured just down the road from Bozak. Bob Krawchuk loves the classics. I'm not talking about books or music here, sports fans. I'm talking snowmobiles. He's got 2 or 3 dozen stored away around town and loves talking about them.
This is a Polaris 1973 TX 500 Triple Limited Edition. Over here, this is one of my racing sleds. This is a 1973 TX Starfire Racer. This little guy over here is a 1970 TX Playmate.
Pick any machine here, pull the cord, and she purrs like a cat. But these beauties need a lot of spit and polish before they come to life again.
It's a Polaris Super Voyager. It's a 1968. It was a heavy pulling machine. You can notice the tracks right beside us here. It's 31 inches wide. First reaction is sort of like, it gives you a sense that it's still alive. It's been sitting there all those years, and now you've clutched it out from where it was rotting away, and now you're going to give it life again. When I compare, like, you look at the new independent sleds and liquid cooled and go 100 miles an hour, and you compare them to the classics of the 70s, when people ask me, you know, like, what do you think of it? I always say, like, when I get onto an early 70s classic snowmobile, to me, that sled, you drive them, and on the new ones, you just ride them.
Bob's love of the old machines comes honestly. You see, his grandfather was Mike Bozak, the co-inventor of one of the first snowmobiles and a man recognized in American history books, but not in Canadian.
This road is named after my grandfather, Mike Bozak, and just up the road here was where the first Bozak Power Toboggan came from. Right behind me here is where the first original shop was from approximately 1947 to 1965. And the first test runs were done just over here. We were sitting around and talking about grandfather since he had passed away. And we just said, like, wasn't it really neat, the accomplishment that he made? And then we thought, well, why don't we find one of these things? Why don't we find one, restore it, and have one? The whole thing was I wanted to get to drive one in. I never did.
Mike Bozak was a trapper and a fisherman, and the Bozak was born through his need for versatile transportation.
Originally it started, he tried to make a snowplane. The story that grandmother had told us was that he went to an auction sale and bought a kitchen table for 25 cents. He brought this table home, he chopped the legs off this table, he put skis on the bottom of it. He mounted, I believe it was a Briggs & Stratton engine on the table, and he hand-carved the prop.
He quickly gave up on the prop and concentrated on using tracks to propel his snow machines. That trail led him to the Bozak Power Toboggan. Its 10-horsepower engine could pull up to 1,200 pounds or a few friends and factory workers. With the help of Broken Head area farmers, Mike started an assembly line turning out 50 snowmobiles a winter. He also hired a young fella from down the road, Paul Krawchuk, Bob's dad.
Usually they had a little strap across here with a hole.
I gotta put it on yet, eh?
Might have even worked on this one. I worked back with father-in-law in the late 50s, 56 till 60, when we got married. He married his daughter. First I want to see what the business is going to be like.
We're gonna straighten these skis out because they're totally off, eh? What? Pull this one out here till it's straight. It would be nice to get a few more restored so I get a little bit more variety, and it would be a better showpiece, shall we say, of you know, what he had done. to be good.
I used to race them. I lost one race when I broke one of those bolts.
Today, father and son return to the site of those early races. It's time to share Bob's favorite machines with people who've come from all over the continent to the Canadian Power Toboggan Championships in Beausejour. Nearly 5 million snowmobiles run in North America alone. Most are used for recreation, but they're also used by trappers, the military, for rescue work, and by conservationists. The Laplanders use them to herd reindeer. This herd just uses them for laps. But when the new breed need a breather, it's time to bring out some other champions. The old champions. The classics from the tracks from a long time ago. And you can bet your sweet Bozak that Bob Krawchuk is beaming with pride as he parades past the crowd.
It's one thing to be a collector and have all your stuff stored away in containers and sheds, but it's another thing to be on display where everybody can enjoy them, and there's a lot of people out there that can appreciate this sort of thing.
I went through all the books and no, nothing looked like it. The guy says, bet you anything could be a Bozak. So I happened to be going over to Charles Hasman's, and he had information on Bozaks.
That's when you called.
And that's when I called Bob that day, and that's how we connected. Yeah.
It's too bad there is no local clubs right here in Manitoba. I have friends that are really getting into this collecting, and we're thinking of starting a local club perhaps in Manitoba.
Who knows what he might find next? But one thing is for sure. When the snow begins to fly, you can usually find Bob Krawchuk bending over a Bozak somewhere around Beausejour. Or maybe taking one of his pride and joys out for a joyride.
I guess you can say my main goal with the Bozaks of collecting and restoring is awareness to make people know that Mike Bozak was the second person in Canada to contribute to the snowmobile.